Life after the transplant was rough at first.
The immediate couple of weeks after the transplant, you are still in the hospital.
You're going to hit a low. They were pretty good about predicting exactly when that was going to be and where the bottom was. And, it wasn't pleasant at that point.
It's a long process. It's not something that happens overnight. There were days that I just didn't want to get up. I just felt so bad. But then I had to get that attitude, come on, you gotta go, you gotta go.
I had a routine. I said, I'm not going to lay around in bed, because my idea was if you lay around in bed, you're just going to get weaker and sicker. That was the way I looked at it. And I spent my time walking, reading. I did a lot of reading, and I did a lot of work while I was in there too. I made myself a little desk and I worked.
My physician pushed me to keep exercising and exercising, even when it was difficult. And I feel that made all the difference for me in my recovery.
Leaving the hospital even after a transplant is a little bit frightening.
That was the hardest thing to do, because you're in a small cocoon, you're being so well taken care of, you've developed these super strong relationships with your nurses, and then all of a sudden they want to just put you out in the world again.
After the transplant, your immune system is suppressed to prevent any sort of rejection type reaction or graft versus host disease, that sort of thing. So you're on immune system suppressants, and that's really the most dangerous part of the whole process. Because while your immune system is suppressed, you're more receptive to getting infections and fungal infections and bacterial infections and all sorts of things. So you have to be really, really careful during that first 100 days, especially.
There were a few times they had to put me back in the hospital.
I took a lot of medications. Because your immune system is suppressed, you're taking antibiotics and antifungals and a whole host of, I had a dresser top full of all sorts of medications that I was taking, and that's kind of unpleasant.
There are days that are bad, and there are days that you're not going to want to get up and cook dinner or get up and take the dog out and stuff.
It takes an army of people to get through this. You really have to build a strong network.
I had to adjust my life, and I'm not one to sit down, and so that was really hard for me, but I knew that I could make those adjustments and find things that would make me happy and move on and get stronger, and that was my biggest adjustment.
And as the process goes on, you start to feel better, and it just takes a while.
The magic number after a transplant is usually 100 days. And it's like if you have survived at 100 days and you're feeling okay, then you're like kind of on the right trajectory to do okay.
Right before the transplant, my friend Carl, who I used to ride bicycles with, we made a deal that if I got through the transplant, that we were going to do the Savannah Century 100-mile bike ride 10 months after the transplant. And Carl's reaction was kind of funny. He said, Bob, I haven't ridden a bike in 10 years. He said, I'm 40 pounds overweight. I said, Carl, I'm getting a bone marrow transplant. So we made a deal that if I survived it, that we were going to do that. And so I was constantly setting goals like that. Carl and I did go do that century. It wasn't easy. It was probably the hardest thing that I ever did. But at that point, I knew I was on the path to recovery.
I never, ever could have imagined that I would have the life I have now, that I would be able to do the things I can now.
I just had a baby grandchild, our first grandchild, and there's another one coming in October. And I've decided to retire and to care for my grandchildren and just dedicate my life to my family.
Going through something like that changes your outlook on life. Things that used to seem important start to seem trivial after you've faced a life-threatening illness.